nature of God, the urantia book. Inasmuch as man's highest possible concept of God is embraced within the human idea and ideal of a primal and infinite personality. It just goes on and on. But a personal God, that's what's important here. The fact, the reality, the truth of a personal God. This God has a personal will for personal beings like me, you, or anyone. So that's the story of creation, is to find perfection in God's will. This is well illustrated on the world in terms of religion, all religions, all fundamental religions, all spirituality, the ideas and concepts of knowing God's will, living God's will, finding God's will. It's very well known, of course, on urantia. That's the nature of creation. The third preaching tour. So they give a nice detailed story here about Jesus's life. The fourth part of this book, much longer than the Bible, of course, much longer, much more detailed. And what he actually said is it sounds a lot better than the way the Bible puts it. So, but it's real times. This is Judaism a couple thousand years ago. I mean, this is, what it is in real terms. The ruler of the synagogue then took his place before the ark or chest containing the sacred writings and began the recitation of the 19 prayer eulogies or benedictions. Up there for. But on this occasion, it was desirable to shorten the service. So Jesus read from Deuteronomy. And then he said, he turned to Isaiah. So this is, I flipped here to the Nazareth Rejection, where he went back to Nazareth during his public mission, and the people there rejected him. I could try to find it here, read it, whatever, but I think maybe some of the Pharisees or the higher Jewish priests of one kind or another had ruffians in the crowd to make a disturbance. So there was like sort of a plan to reject Jesus this was serious in the sense that the tumult resulted in lots of people escorting or taking Jesus to a mountain cliff. And when he got there, he just kind of turned around and, with the whole force of the emotions and the people and the whatnot, he just walked right through the crowd and walked away from being pushed over this cliff. But that was their goal, was to take him there and push him over that cliff. The touching part, I guess, of all this, when they mention that later on, the apostles or whomever noticed that Jesus wasn't quite recovered from the Nazareth rejection, that he was still feeling the sorrow, whatever. So real happenings, real feelings, real emotions, and emotions that have to be thought through, overcome. You can't necessarily just go on to the next thing. So there's that moment there where Jesus is feeling those emotions, and he can't just go on to the next thing. He's feeling those emotions of having been rejected by his hometown Nazareth. So he's being sad or suffering. Um, what do you say here? Today are these scriptures fulfilled? So, it's easy for him to say that at this point. He's had enough experiences in his life where he knows for certain um, he's the or a son of God. Like, he has real abilities outside of earthly abilities. He already did the water and the wine thing and some other miracles. So he knows who he is in that sense. Spoke for almost 15 minutes on the sons and daughters of God. And they don't give us any of it. In this particular section here in the Urantia book, they don't give us anything about what he said in his homily, I guess you would call it. So many people liked it, of course. In this group were many turbulent individuals whose minds were bent on mischief. And there circulated those debased men who had been hired to make trouble for Jesus. So they sought to lead the master away, but he would not go with them. So, I suppose Jesus knew what was going on, but he wanted to follow through with whatever this was in terms of an example in life. He's going to use it as an example of life. They say like in the midst of the crucifixion, like before the crucifixion, but during that time period, um, Annas, the highest of the high priests there of the Jews, hoped Jesus would just go to another land. He didn't really want to kill a good man, something like that. And Jesus could have, but that's just not how he wanted it to play out. That's not how God the Father wanted it to play out. So that's not how it played out. But all these things are possibilities. So as usual, well, not as usual, but Simon Zealots does something to instigate matters, and that's when the Nazareth rejection really begins, where they take hold of Jesus and run him up to the side of a cliff or something like that. Jesus would have handled it, peacefully. The tactical blunder of Simon Zealots, who gathered together a group of Jesus' friends from among the crowd and, assuming a belligerent attitude, had served notice on the enemies of the master to go hence. Once again, they don't quote him exactly. We'd rather have the exact quote that Simon Zealot said. So, for whatever reason, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And I'm sure they have very specific reasons for when they will actually quote someone versus when they will not quote someone, whether it's Jesus or anyone, any of the players here, the characters uh, in the time period of Jesus. Um, so yeah, they just like I said earlier, that's kind of how it went. So that's how Jesus wanted it to play out. So that's how it played out. I mean, you can wonder, like, had they actually shoved them over the cliff, He could have like, just landed somewhere, right? So, but that didn't happen. He never did. They say in here he never did anything um, completely unnatural, like a complete abrogation of natural law. In fact, they say in here he never broke natural law whatsoever. I'm not sure exactly what they mean about that, but um, something like that, something like where he's thrown from a super high cliff, but he just lands or just disappears, reappears somewhere. I do believe he had all these type powers, and so at that time, since it wasn't his time to die, would he have survived this push off the cliff? We'll never know. But if he had done something like that, that would be, to me, I mean, that would be blatantly exercising powers that have nothing to do with nature or natural ability or things of this nature. Like it's not like they say like all his miracles were natural because all they were was time shortened. So like the same thing could have happened, except that it was time shortened. Like people could have brought all kinds of fish and loaves to the time when he took a few fish and a few loaves of bread and fed 5,000, I believe the number is. Um, I mean, in my mind, they say, it's time shortened, it's a natural event. So all I can think is, well, yeah, people could have brought all these fish into the area there to feed the multitude from a time shortened standpoint. But anyway, uh, adjusters and human personality. The higher forms of intelligent intercommunication between human beings are greatly helped by the indwelling adjusters. Animals do have fellow feelings, but they do not communicate concepts to each other. They can express emotions, but not ideas and ideals. Somewhere in here, it might say it here, animals experience fear. I mean, in truth, we should all be raw vegans. In truth, and someday this world, everyone will be a raw vegan. It will happen. Um, you know, the factory farming is heinous. Um, um, and Adam and Eve were raw vegans, so that's the standard for how to eat. No cooking. They're very plain about it um, in the Adam and Eve papers, and so that's the goal. That's the goal for anyone, me, you, anyone. Raw vegan. Anyway, um, the adjusters. Well, I get excited when I read anything about the adjusters or talk about the thought adjusters. Obviously, because my goal, your goal, anyone's goal is to become one with their thought adjuster. The goal is perfection in the thought adjuster's will, which is the Father's will. That's the goal. So I always feel a little uplifted inside when I read anything on the thought adjusters. There's like 6 papers or so exclusively devoted to the information about the thought adjusters. It's always a little uplifting for me to read anything about the thought adjusters, which is good. Versus like other parts, if I'm reading something about early man and ghost cults and whatever that, man of 300,000 years ago was doing, I'll read that and I'll say, this is really boring, you know, but it's all good information. The book is very well written. All of it's really well written. Um, so, I mean, it's worth reading. Here's something up above that, something above two brain worlds. So, um, they'll say that the three brain worlds, humans with 3 brains versus humans with two brains, that would be us, and then humans with one brain. That's how evolutionary man is throughout all of creation. One of those three. They say that the brain and the spinal cord and is standard for all humans in the entire grand universe. So there's a sentence like that. And I believe they say that being bipedal, standing and walking, is standard for all humans. I think they say that too. So that aside from that, the differences can be great as far as the creation of the humans. Um, but while the two brain worlds are a little more advanced, even in light and life, even when worlds are completely as good as they get in terms of goodness, ancient worlds, ancient evolutionary worlds that have progressed through all the incorrect lower phases of humanity, and they're at the highest phases of humanity. Um, they'll say, like, I think they say this. I think it's what they're saying is that two brain worlds are more advanced than one brain worlds. They can do things that one brain worlds can't. But then three brain worlds are like even like much more advanced. You know, throughout the entire evolutionary phase and in the stages of light and life, they can still do more in terms of whatever activity they do um, on a three brain sphere versus a two brain sphere versus a one brain sphere. So, and then you got your highest thoughts here in terms of, eternity, infinity, things of this nature. So we've got like here's something I just flipped to about promulgation of finite reality or repercussions of finite reality, the deity response, the appearance of the three levels of experiential supremacy, the actuality of personal spirit supremacy in Avona, the potential for personal power supremacy in the grand universe to be, and the capacity for some unknown function of experiential mind acting on some level of supremacy in the future master universe. All right, whatever all this is about, right? So, they're just, the master universe is all of creation. Outside of the grand universe and the Paradise Avona system, they list four outer space levels. And there's a line in there. I like this line. So the spirit of the Father patrols all of the master universe. So all of those sections of the creation outside of the grand universe have not been occupied with personal beings yet. But the spirit of the Father patrols all that area. There's a line like that. Um, the grand universe to be. So there's a lot of enthusiasm in talking here about achieving light in life. Like it's a real goal for these higher spirit beings. Seems like they would like to see it yesterday. Sometimes is the way they sound. Like when this, that, and the other place section of all of creation is settled in light and life. To me, I sense a little enthusiasm on their part. Like that they're looking forward to a better creation in terms of the goodness of the beings in it. Um, and that would be Caligastia's major downfall is that he wanted to make things better. Let's give them more abilities of this, that, or the other thing to make life overall better. Which on the surface doesn't sound all that bad. Sounds like a fairly good idea. However, um, you can't go advance. You can't advance at a pace that's not in accord with all of creation. Um, and so his ideas of advancing society faster than the norms went against higher policy. So he was found in default rebellion, soon to be eliminated as a being. There's a sentence in here like they can't wait to hear how Lucifer has been destroyed, and oh, they'll be so happy. There's a line in here about that, like that, saying it just like that, sort of, kind of. I should try to find it, but I don't know if I could find it quick. Anyway, I didn't even bring up the urantia book.org. Gotta look up something. What are we doing? Okay. Um, cathedrals. Uh, Back to that part about Tibetans. Not good. All their elaborate bells, chants, incense, processionals, rosaries, images, charms, pictures, holy water. They're not being very, they're not saying that's a particularly good thing. A little too materially preoccupied. Like they'll say things like, um, what causes someone to be eliminated as a being is they just get too materially preoccupied. And it's like going down a path that will eventually lead you to personality extinction. They put it just like that, like being too material minded. I'm pretty sure some of the senses put it that way. Not so much non material, moral thoughts, feelings, actions, behaviors. Not so much that, but just straight up material mindedness can lead someone to personality extinguishment. I think there's lines sort of like that to me in here. Anyway, um, so let's see. Well, here's something about the Adam and Eve story. In the original Melchizedek plan for the improvement of the urantia races, so the Melchizedeks are in charge of the higher ends of most everything that concerns a local universe, seems like. So they're in charge, sort of, kind of, the whole Adam and Eve going to any given world. It had been stipulated that 1 million of the pure line descendants of Adam should go to upstep the red men of the Americas. So one way or another, from the Iraq area to the Americas, um, 1 million of the descendants of Adam and Eve were going to go and upstep them, basically physically. I mean, they definitely refer to the material sons as the biologic uplifters, and they emphasize that more so than the intellectual, emotional, moral upliftment, which is certainly true of the Adam and Eve uh, civilization, is that they're better in every way. But um, very specifically, biologic uplifters. So we got very little of that, obviously, the biologic uplifting part. And there's a line in the book, like they say, this is an experimental plan. And there were certain diseases that were going on early on in evolutionary man before Adam and Eve. But once the Adamic blood took hold amongst the peoples in terms of intermarriage and whatnot, um, these diseases wouldn't have been so bad. They were not counting on the default of Adam and Eve, or the default of the planetary prince. That's the life carriers who were in charge of that type of stuff at that time. Um, and they definitely also say that the goal is to bring in, and this should be the goal for any type organization that's out to uplift, bring in the people from the outlying area or whatever, instruct them with your people, and then send them back as leaders and teachers amongst their own people. So the missionary idea is backwards. What you really should do is bring people from that area, have them live among you, learn, grow, experience, and send them back as teachers to their own people versus doing the missionary thing where you show up and just tell everybody what to do. They definitely say that, but there's got to be an interplay of this, like they're saying here. 1 million of the Adam and Eve children would have gone into the Americas amongst the red man. Um, so there would have been a lot of interplay in terms of um, some beings going back to Eden, others not.